5:30, let's go ahead and start our meeting. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Eastman?
Here.
Commissioner Gainer?
Here.
Commissioner Sybrant?
Here.
Commissioner Welch?
Here.
Mayor Warren?
Here. If you want to participate in the prayer and the pledge of allegiance, please stand. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here to work together towards a common goal, we ask for your presence to guide and direct our decisions. We know your will is for the good of all members of our community. We also pray for our police and fire department and city workers for their safety and the work they do. We pray this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could somebody back in the back room shut the doors, please, so we can, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We have two additions. We have ordinance number 2019-09, which is the ordinance exempting application of consumption of alcohol beverage, or alcohol liquor at South Central Kansas Medical Center. And that was just given to you.
Okay.
They made that request in order to have their land rush fundraiser. We'll put that underneath new business item 4. And then also item number 5 would be a 20-minute executive session discussing non-elected personnel.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for
So moved.
second? Okay. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approves. Okay, the awards and proclamations. We have proclaimed September the 8th through the 14th, 2019 as Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week in Arkansas City. Do we have anybody here for?
Anyone here from Mosaic?
She's not here yet. Wow.
Okay, whereas in the week of September the 8th, 2019 has been designated as the National Direct Support Professional Recognition Week in order to celebrate and recognize professionals who provide support to millions of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And whereas this celebration recognizes the dedication and vital role of the direct support professionals enhancing the lives of individuals with disabilities of all ages, and whereas the community plays a role in lifting up direct support professionals as integral in supporting the needs of people with disabilities and their families through service systems across the United States. And whereas the goals of the city and its equal opportunity and accessibility advisory board properly give recognition to those who directly help people with disabilities to gain full access to housing, employment, and the recreation activities that help to create productive and satisfying lives and also live as independently as possible. Now therefore, I, J. Warren, Mayor of the City of Arkansas City, do hereby proclaim September the 8th through September the 14th, 2019 as the Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week in the City of Arkansas City, and call upon all citizens of Arkansas City to serve the week with appropriate programs and activities. Furthermore, I encourage the citizens of Arkansas City to seek information from those organizations with the expertise in matters concerning professionals who support individuals with intellectual and development disabilities.
Thank you very much.
You want to say something?
I don't know that our community still remembers that we have such a high rate of service to those with disabilities in our community. We have several houses within our community and our county, and the amount of payroll that we have in our services, and the federal dollars and state dollars that we utilize for the disabled comes directly from the fact that we were a state hospital in our county, and when those closed, we were able to take over those services because of those people that work in the industry. And I hope that you will look out for those homes and provide entertainment and social opportunities with those individuals. Thank you.
Just a second, were you ladies involved in this too?
Yeah.
Why don't you come on up so we get a picture of you, I'm sorry. Did you want to say anything about this?
Sure.
Okay. Rhonda, you-
Hi, I'm Angeline Anderson. I'm the Associate Director at Mosaic here in South Central Kansas. And I just want to say how excited we are and how proud I am to be here accepting this proclamation on behalf of all of the DSPs and all of the great work that they do in our community and communities across Kansas. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 3, requisition of visitors. Mark Shields, do you want to come up here?
Yes, sir. Oh, what'd you say the first part? I didn't catch it.
What did you want to come up? You wanted to talk about something that's not on the agenda?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. You just turn that microphone back towards you. No, just
Get on the
yeah,
backside
you
there.
get on the backside there.
All right, I got it. I was in June, in May and June, I took a survey, well, it wasn't really a survey, a petition to fix 8th Street because of the cracks from Madison Avenue to Kansas Avenue. There was a number of citizens that came to me because I did it 10 years before when Dottie Smith was mayor. And they fixed 8th Street by chip sealing the correct way back then. What they did was the city crews blew out the cracks and they leveled it up with road tar, sometimes 3, 4, 5 layers till it was level with the surface of the road. And then they poured the oil down, spread it, and put the chip seal rock on it. I was told that was the correct way to do it, and that lasted 10 years. This time I was told back in June or July at the city meeting that it would be done indeed the same way. And it's not been done the same way. They didn't level the cracks up in front of people's houses. And so citizens have complained to me, that's why I'm here again. But it's already too late from my understanding because they just poured the rock down on the wet oil and didn't make the cracks the level of the street by using hot tar as they said they would. I'd just like to know why that was done. When I was told, and that's in the minutes of the meeting, that it would be done the right way. Anybody have any ideas on that?
Well, Nick, do you have any?
I'll take that.
Okay.
Yeah, in my past life as public service, public works director, it's putting the cart before the horse. When you do your crack seal, it's thick oil they put in. You have to do it when it's cold. Chip seal, you put it down when it's the hottest in August. If you go to Wichita, you see the counties and the cities all chip sealing. So what we have to do now, when it gets cold, then they can go in and clean out the cracks and put the sealant in, because it's thick, the sealant they put in. So you want it to be cold.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just stays hot and then just.
That's interesting because 10 years ago when they did it with Dottie Smith being the mayor, it was done in the summertime and it was hot like that. And it lasted 10 years.
Well, maybe this will last longer. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right now, it's horrible. I mean, it fixed it to a certain degree. They aren't as deep as they were, but that's just rock in there. It's not, I don't think it's gonna
Yeah,
last.
no, we'll go back and,
In the winter time they'll do it?
when it gets cold.
All
When
right.
it gets cold.
All right, thank you. I guess I didn't understand that.
I asked you to come back after it's done again.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I appreciate that.
And I'd like to ask, since you're at the podium, I own 2 houses on 8th Street. The only complaint I've heard from tenants and some of the people around my homes was the dust. Did we use a different chip on it? It was seemed dirtier this year than normal.
Yeah, they did. They used a different chip than they normally do. Before they got the chip at, Baxter Springs area? Yes. Out there. Yeah, Tony should be addressing this. My replacement. You wanna address it?
Well, before in recent years, we've got the chip seal from Baxter Springs, and we had it trucked in when we had time available to get it here. But, I'm Tony Chapman.
Hi.
But, when Mike decided to retire, Nick gave me the opportunity. The timeline wasn't right for us to go clear to Baxter Springs and still have time to get it applied. So we got what everybody else was using, the county, the state, the other cities, got it from over at Centerville, the quarry over there. And it is a different rock.
Is it limestone?
It's a crushed rock. It's a crushed white rock. It's not limestone.
Okay, because
But,
paper had it, somebody had it.
Well,
Social media.
Purdue had it as limestone, cause that's what he decided it
Oh, okay.
was. But we had it, we went and got it ourselves. We had such a short timeline, in between all the rainstorms that were coming and our opportunity to get the work done, I chose to get the work done. Otherwise, you'd still have that old
Oh, yeah.
worn out street out there waiting for the right rock to get here. Because we could basically haul 1 load a day, going from Ark City to Baxter Springs.
Wow, that's a long haul.
And that's gonna take you quite a while to get enough here. We did 900 tons to do 8th Street.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, so that's gonna take you a few days to get here with some
Yeah.
rock like that.
Yeah.
I mean, is it the best rock? No.
That's why.
We
it's so
didn't have
dusty,
opportunity
right?
for the best rock,
Yeah.
right? But that's what opportunity presented us and the crew. That was a learning experience for us as well. Some of them had done it before, some of them hadn't. But, I back these guys 110%. We got 8th Street done, from Madison to Kansas Avenue.
Right.
In between rainstorms, the first day we worked from sunup to basically sundown
I saw that.
to get the street done, to get the tanker empty. And that's something that the guys said had never been done before, but we did it because we knew we were up against the wall with the rain coming in. The dust, that's uncontrollable. It's about like a Kansas tornado.
Yeah.
It's gonna be part of Kansas you're gonna have to deal with sooner or
Old
later.
timer said it, reminded him of the infamous Dust Bowl.
But we do apologize, and,
Thanks for answering my
we're
question.
working on it.
Yeah.
All right?
Let's get the cracks, man.
Well, thanks, Tony, and thank you.
Thanks
Yes.
very much.
Next, phosphor.
I'd just like to say that I like Josh's presentation.
Do what now?
Can't hear you, boss.
He's waiting till after Josh's presentation.
Okay,
Yeah, the CLG is what I want to talk
okay,
about, if anybody has questions.
okay. All right. The consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. One is to approve the August 20th, 2019 regular meeting as written. And number 2, a resolution authorizing a public meeting of the government bodies to attend a Spatial City Works Study session at noon Friday, September the 6th, 2019 in the city manager's office at City Hall, 118 West Central Avenue. And then the third one is approve the adoption of the resolution number 19304, adopted by the City Council of the City of Wichita on August the 20th, 2019 regarding the insurance of the bonds of the Presbyterian Manors. Nick, you might just briefly talk about that, just on that.
Presbyterian Manor, all the bonds are issued by the city of Wichita, and basically what this is you have 3 choices on it. You can approve it, deny it, or take no action whatsoever. And honestly, the bonds are gonna be issued with or without us, and so, really, this is just kind of a housekeeping item for the city of Wichita that they must do in order to maintain their status with the Presbyterian Manors and the, state, Kansas, I can't remember how many locations they have throughout the state, but they basically do a blanket for all the Presbyterian Manors, and this is really just a housekeeping
Okay.
item for us.
Is there any questions from the, okay, well, I'll make a motion, we, approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 1 on old business.
Hold a public hearing and consider a resolution authorizing the city to apply for a community development block grant to replace water lines in Brad, Meek, and Hillside additions.
Okay, so Tamara, we just need to start with a public hearing right now. I'll open up a public hearing on consider the resolution authorizing the city of Arkansas City to apply for the community development block grant CDBG to replace water lines in the Brad, Meek, and Hillside additions. Is there any discussion from the audience? If not, I close the hearing. Number 1, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Number 1, or A.
We'll need a voice vote on that first.
Okay, all right. I make a motion that we we already held a public hearing.
Resolution.
Yeah.
I make a motion of the resolution authorizing the city of Arkansas City to apply for the community development block grant, the CDBG, to replace water lines in Brad, Meek, and Hillside addition.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Is there any discussion on it? This has been long overdue. I mean, we've been working on this thing for
Yeah, that house
Couple
was
years.
built in the fifties, and so those water lines are about 70 years old in that area. There is quite a few homes. I'm trying to remember the exact number. You remember, Josh? 350 or so homes will actually receive new services in the area, which would be great. And this will probably address, honestly, it'll probably address about 80 to 85% of the red water complaints in the city. I mean, this is a very high proportion of where we have main breaks and red water issues. So we still have a few other little areas that we need to address, but nothing of this scale.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and second. Any other discussion on it? Not, it's a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 8.
Part A, to that item is consider a resolution certifying legal authority to apply for the 2020 Kansas Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program from the Kansas Department of Commerce and authorizing Mayor Warren to sign and submit such an application.
Well, basically, it's just proving that, it's just
I know,
proving.
I can't find the verbiage.
I so move that we consider resolution certifying legal authority to apply for the 2020 Kansas Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program from the Kansas Department of Commerce and authorizing Mayor Jay Warren to sign and submit such an application.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Is there any discussion on it? If not, it's a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number B.
Part B to that item, consider a resolution assuring the Kansas Department of Commerce that funds will be continually provided for the operation and maintenance of improvements to the Arkansas City water system to be financed with the Community Development Block Grant funds.
Can you explain that one?
Basically, that means that once it's in place, we don't abandon it. Make sure that we still maintain it properly. You know, we're still fixing main breaks. We're still operating the system, because what they've had issues with in the past, very rarely though, very rarely, they'll do a CDBG grant and then they'll in turn maybe sell the system, or they'll just say we're not going to service that area anymore and kind of leave it on its own. It's very rare, but it has happened. Basically, you're assuring that you're going to continue that, and also that you're going to make sure that you have the funds available to service that area as well, and to operate your water plant and make sure that you have enough money to operate that system. Because there has been, in recent history, a little bit of issue that, or questions in regards to that. So that's what that assurance does.
Okay.
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, I move we assure the Kansas Department of Commerce that funds will be continually provided for the operation and maintenance of improvements to the Arkansas City water system being financed with Community Development Block Grant funds.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Katie, did you get your answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna do the motion, but yeah.
Okay. If there's no other questions, a voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Under new business one,
Approved personnel policy updates.
Mr. Mayor and City Commission, I have updated several, as you can see, personnel policies for you. Gave you quite a lot to review. I thought I would not take too much time in reviewing every single one of them with you, but in asking you if you have questions for me regarding the specifics of any of these policies. They're pretty standard. A lot of the changes were just grammatical in nature, nothing significant. There are no significant changes in really any of these policies. The travel policy is new. It's completely updated, as is the employee speech and social media policy. All of these policies have been reviewed through the management team at our meetings and through Power DMS, where we review and comment on all of them. And we have all approved them as they stand now.
You wanna touch on the social media policy?
Certainly. Certainly. What we are talking about in social media, employee speech and social media, is trying to balance between free speech and the ability to monitor, in a sense, what employees do on social media. The first part of the policy refers to official social media of the city and who can and who cannot participate in that social media, who can and who cannot speak on behalf of the organization. The second part, of course, we do talk about that nothing is intended to prohibit or infringe upon free speech of any employees. They have the right to talk about matters of public concern, the right to collectively bargain, which is a union type thing, you know, that employees can talk about the terms and conditions of their employment. You can't prohibit them from that. We also talked about that when an employee is posting on social media on behalf of the city, it will be the city's perspective. It will be the city's view, not the employees. On the other hand, when an employee is speaking on their own social media, we have asked them within this policy to state that it is their opinion and not the official opinion of the city.
do you have much problems with that, I mean, in the past, or?
It's kind of new.
We have been actually fortunate. There are some exchanges that do go on. We haven't had anyone that we have had any serious issues with. So I think people are behaving pretty well. We've talked about this policy with the employee council, and so that they understand that they are supposed to express that these are their views, not the views of the city. So we have also discussed it with them.
We do have some employees that put on there what they're working on, what they're doing. You know, I don't think there's anything against that in the policy, as long as they're not taking an official position for the city, not stating that that is the position of the city, I think is the major thing, because that should only be done on our official page through, the administrators at that, site. So that's something we make sure that we try to ensure that they're not taking any official opinion of the city.
Okay.
I move we approve the personnel policy updates.
He still has one more.
Well, a question or comment or both. Social media is beginning to be a major problem for a lot of cities and businesses and everything else, because of it's very easy to spread rumors and other things, whether you tell people it's your opinion or case or rule. I don't know how to address this other than saying the social media, to me, shouldn't be used by any employee that it's not cleared or go through the channels of the city government and spread through other media. To me, a social media comment that's detrimental to any person, any part of the town, any equipment, any job that's being done, if it's spread through the Traveler, through other media, that's one thing. To put it out on Twitter or some of these other social media accounts that are only shared with their friends or acquaintances or whatever it is wrong. Is there any way to address that in a public entity?
It's very difficult to balance free speech in addition to our ability to monitor what they say. So we do have some provisions in here where, like speech that negatively affects the safety of other employees or would possibly give out information that is not supposed to be provided, confidential information, that sort of thing, we can do something with, but am I correct, Tamara, in that we have to be very careful with the free speech?
Yes, so of course the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech, and really that's what happens outside of work hours. Everyone has a right to give their opinion, but we do have the ability to regulate some of the things, as Marla said, if they give out confidential information or perhaps harm the potential safety of another employee. So there are some things we can regulate. This is kind of a legal minefield, and
Well, I
that
understand
cases
that.
come out all the time and change it, so I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see us coming back fairly regularly with a change to this policy when a new opinion comes out that would then require us to alter our policy as well. So that's something we monitor to make sure that we appropriately regulate.
Tamara, is there anything to regulate a specific department to allow the department head to put it out on Twitter and not the employees? Is there a way to
Yes.
funnel stuff to one person that could be accountable to this commission or the taxpayer?
On the official city pages and Twitter accounts and that sort of thing, absolutely. We can 100% regulate that. We can regulate what we put out there, who's entitled to speak on behalf of the city, and those are things that we do.
But does that filter down to that particular employee? I'm not, no example I can give even, but if an employee at a lower level starts out on his Twitter account with, the gravel on 8th Street was inferior gravel, and I heard it at the commission meeting, that's not the message we want to get across.
But if they do it on their own account, in their own time, and it's accurate, there's probably nothing we can do about it, because they have a right to say that.
Okay.
That falls into the public concern exception.
Okay, is there any other questions?
So you're not saying that city employees cannot answer questions if asked? You're not saying that they can't say what they're doing? Did you just,
Right.
not, you said that, right? You can say what they're doing during work, you know, finish this or did that, or this is done. So you're not saying they can't be on social media?
No.
On their own pages or on somebody else's page and say that. You're just saying they can't go on here and say, this piece of equipment's faulty, I hope whomever gets on it gets hurt?
Wouldn't wanna say anything, wouldn't wanna release social security numbers or anything like that. Now, they do have the right to speak about public concern as well as collective bargaining with terms and conditions of employment. They do have the right to do that.
Where would they do that?
If it was a union town, which we're not.
Yeah,
having unions,
okay.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's just.
That's
if there
just the
was-
law.
Just the law.
So you're saying you don't want them to speak on behalf of the city as you want the city manager to do that,
We
or the
would
department
prefer.
head?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or to take confidential information they learn. For example, you wouldn't believe whose water got turned off today, or something. That's something that's very confidential in our city utility records. Can't post that on social
Yeah, or
media.
so-and-so didn't pay their bill, you know, so we turned their water off for the 20th time or whatever. I mean,
And to your knowledge, that has never happened?
no.
Not
Right.
in our city, but there's examples of it in other cities. There's a reason these policies get fleshed out in the courts, because it does
see it on the public information officers, you'll see it on HRs, because they had an employee do this, and, or said this, and it's just like, oh my goodness. So, it is constantly changing, and we're trying to stay on top of it, and ours hadn't been updated since 2011.
Since they had Facebook.
It's been,
a long
it's
time.
been some time,
Is it on,
yes.
is it on there?
Well, it concerns me a great
No,
deal,
that one was
the
not
national,
prior.
the national slippage of information, you know, this leaked out. It didn't leak out. Somebody intentionally
Oh,
sent this
absolutely.
message
Oh, yeah.
out.
Yeah.
No example in our city. I don't think it'll happen. Hope it doesn't happen. But there's these leaks come right back to the social media and other places. It doesn't have to be me that leaks it out. I might have slept on it. My wife might have said,
In Washington DC, every day there's leaks.
"There's a leak." Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not a leak. It's always. And I don't think anybody in any of the city departments or commission or anybody else ever does anything that needs to be leaked, but it seems to tend to once in a while. And it's detrimental to that department and even the city if they're trying to do the best they can and all the other people in the division are trying to do the best they can, but somebody's sour grapes about whatever it is. So.
And honestly, most often when you see anything detrimental on social media, it's because they're upset with something someone did,
Yes,
or
that's
they
my
felt
point.
like they're treated unfairly, or
Yeah,
whatever it may be,
yeah.
and it may be a very isolated incident.
Marla, how many employees do you have?
Right now, I'm not sure at the very moment, but I would say probably around 112 to 116.
Okay, and of those, you have an employee council. How many members are there?
There are
8 members, I believe, or 9. 9?
9,
Nine
and
members.
then some administrators who are just, there to assist, but the employees.
And so your employees are comfortable with all the policies?
Yes, we haven't talked about every one of these in depth, but we do bring them to them, especially the ones that we think are going to be controversial, maybe like the social media, and we did bring that one to them, and they were comfortable with it,
Okay.
as far as I know.
Any other questions?
Nope. Oh,
Yeah.
Just Brandon Everett, 19 Pinocchio. So beyond the social media expectation, do we have somewhere in there where employees, contractors are supposed to represent the city in their best interest? Because I mean, I know you can't control what people put on Facebook, but it is as an expectation that you want your employees, you want your contractors to represent the city well. Do we have that in there?
We have, yes, standards of conduct, which would refer to that, and behavior that is, we don't want any behavior that is not acceptable for a city employee, and then there are others, I can't remember the specific bullets of that, document, but that would be the policy that we would refer to.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be specifically in social media policy, but anything detrimental regardless could be held against them by the other
Standards.
conduct.
Okay. Brandon, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, I make a motion to approve the personnel policy updates.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any more discussion on it? If not, it's a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2,
Consider a resolution authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with the Kansas State Historic Preservation Officer to conduct historic reviews under K.S.A. 75-2724E as amended.
Mayor and Commission, by statute, all projects that occur in a historic district have to be reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO for short. Much easier to say, so I'll just use that for the rest of my presentation. The SHPO can actually enter into an agreement authorizing the city or the county to make recommendations or perform the responsibilities of the SHPO. And basically, we can do the reviews locally. So this allows the decisions on reviews to be made locally. In fact, some of the reviews that we currently do are actually handled administratively, so they don't have to even go that far. It's just a stamp of approval. Staff cannot.
And we mean, like, give me an example of that.
Well, let's say somebody was putting in a new sign on a building.
Okay.
That would go before the board and they would make the decision based on the comments.
Okay.
The city meets the requirements that are required to enter into such an agreement with them. And we actually did enter an agreement with them in 2014. It's just only for 5 years. So we have to come back and do it if we're interested in continuing.
And we did first time in 14, correct? Wasn't that the first time we approved it?
No.
That
For the
was,
CLG, or was it 2000?
we became a certified local government in 2012.
Yeah, because I remember when I first got here, we were not a CLG, so all the decisions were being made in Topeka. And we thought that this was the best way to get the decision-making process back down to the locals is by becoming a CLG. Because we can tweak things, we can do things, like you said, administratively, that won't require as much of a hurdle to go through as you would through the state.
And the board can kind of use a little bit of discretion when it comes to that. They're generally follow the guidelines, of course, but they understand sometimes there are situations that just are a little more difficult, a little more complicated, and sometimes if you send it up to Topeka, that doesn't quite happen as well. The board has been doing this, like I said, for the last 5 years, and I did meet with them back on August 19th, and they were fully supportive of continuing an agreement. They're pretty happy with the arrangement that we have. And like I said, the SHPO has determined the city needs to kind of restate that. But
Since 2012, have there been any major issues in regards to the SHPO requirements that the board's addressed, that you're aware of? I know prior to 2012, there was a lot of issues, but since we become a CLG, have we had a lot of, issues that have come to the forefront? I think Taylor's windows were one.
that was one of them.
That was probably the most contentious one, but then I think there was an administrative allowance, or not administrative, but the board did allow you to proceed, or was it the commission?
It was the commission. That
The
did
commission
come.
allowed him to.
Yeah, just like before we enter an agreement or without an agreement, anybody can appeal to the city commission the decision,
So they
whether it's
still
a state
can't
or
appeal,
board.
they
Yeah.
still can't appeal to the city commission.
Yeah, if they disagree with the board, they can still come here and present their case.
Is this going to add any undue hardship to businesses that are in those districts and trying to do?
I would actually argue it takes just a little bit back. I mean, the guidelines are the same, like I said, but it gives a property owner the option to actually look somebody in the eye and say, hey, I really think that you should allow me to do this because of this or whatever. I don't know a good example, but again, there's just certain things that you can do locally.
When did the city become a historic district? What year was that?
It's 1983.
1983. And when you go through that process, you're basically designated through the National Park Service, correct? As being a historic district, which is basically kind of like an act of Congress that makes this district a district, correct? So that was done in 1983. Some of the things that could have been done to potentially, to get around being a historic preservation district at the time was Main Street Kansas was a program that could have been done. However, there was a financial commitment, yearly commitment to belong to that program. And so I think the decision was made back in 1983, and I don't know, Boss, were you a part of that initial group?
Not me,
Okay, and I don't know who was.
another generation of those.
But that decision was made in 1983 to go historic preservation route versus the Main Street Kansas route, which gives you all the same rules and regulations, but actually it's a lot cleaner on the Main Street Kansas side because all decisions are made pretty much locally versus having to report to the state. But with this program and being a CLG, at least we got the control back to Arc City and to Arc City citizens rather than being solely on the states making those decisions.
So if a business owner wants to do something and they're told they can't by your organization, their next is to the city commission? And if they don't like that, they can go to district court?
Yeah. mean,
Okay.
you could.
I mean,
take
what's
that
the,
as far as
yeah,
you can go.
I just don't want to limit them to, you're gonna do it our way, or
Right.
you ain't gonna get it done.
Well, an important thing to remember is, while it is state statute to do this process, they're still just guidelines.
Okay,
They're not laws that you have to do it a certain way. They are guidelines to try to preserve district, try to preserve your buildings.
gotcha. Thank you.
So if a business comes to us like a window, and they say, well, these windows are too expensive, and I cannot get them made this way without spending $50,000 for a window, say, and we say, okay, you can make them like that, and it's a whole lot less. Does that have to go back, or does that stop with us being a CLG?
That stops with you.
Okay,
Now, the board can't really base their decision on monetary considerations, but city commission can. If there's, what that comes down to is, I believe the terminology is, there's no reasonable or prudent alternatives.
well, I was getting to,
But that's what happened with Peterson's when they came back to us, because they wanted a cheaper window, and that's what we did. So, I mean, they got what they wanted, so.
well, I was asking about, like, if it's similar to the original.
The thing
Is
is
that-
too, lucky for, just construction methods have changed so much, you can get vinyl windows that look exactly like those old
Mhm.
windows nowadays.
And they're a lot less.
And they're a lot less.
But they're not acceptable.
But no, they
They-
would be through that process.
Through a process of going, Commissioner,
Correct.
this is
But
where,
it would never have need, honestly, if it was even remotely similar, it's not even gonna get to the commission, it's gonna be approved by the board. And if for some reason was not approved, then it would ultimately come to the commission.
okay,
for approval.
I did not wish to interrupt his presentation. If you're finished, I would like to make several comments in this regard. If you're
Go
not,
ahead.
I want to go ahead. I was here in Arc City and owned 8 buildings in downtown Arc City, and my parents owned 6. When this product came to town, we were sold on the idea that the state of Kansas was going to help put money into the community by funding some of these historical projects. The Arc City High School, the old high school that belongs to the college, was one of the first projects. That project received memory, and I'm sorry, at my age, memory's not as good as it used to be, but I believe it received about $75,000 in funding. It cost the junior college over $180,000 to match that funding. One of the other problems was many of the things that came up during that process proved to make the entire project a failure. One of the biggest items was windows that keeps coming up. You cannot use thermopane windows or tinted glass, according to the state's historical district. The JUCO decided, I'm sorry, Lee Gregg would kill me if he was here. I keep using JUCO, but it was my JUCO, I'm sorry. The college elected to put up storm windows over to get the savings of, and that's against the historical district. So Gwen Nelson, president of the college at the time, bought the windows, put them back somewhere out of sight, out of mind for a year after the total renovation, and put the windows up. And if you drive by today, incomplete, and that's the college going against the very people that funded, he put up storm windows because the cost of the heating and cooling was too much. Most of us business owners uptown were hearing the stories and realizing this is a problem. This is not the asset they promised. So I know of 3 properties. The last one was the Burford Theater. And Dr. Snell told me, and I don't know if these figures are accurate, again, my memory and whatever, that they received about $60,000 from the state of Kansas. They spent over $150,000 meeting rules and regulations, and they still have wood window frames and single plate glass windows. The church over here, I was not familiar with the costs or the savings or whatever, so I can't quote anything that. That's the only 3 major products that I know the historical group from Kansas ever came down and did. Since that time, the Arc City group, and nothing against anybody in the Arc City group, but I just happened to go through the minutes that's in my packet of your May 20th meeting. And one of the biggest things seems to be whether the sign should have a purple background or not. Seeing your shirt, you can't be against purple background, surely. Why is that even a historical question? Is the color of something a problem?
What the discussion was there was whether or not you lift the whole thing.
So, we come back to an issue that was brought up several years ago when the, what was the company that went in, Bryan Hardware, that wanted the sign, lighted
Leather.
sign, leather? Yeah. And that sign, I believe, is still hanging today, but is it illegal against what the resolution
sign-
wanted, or?
That sign actually did come before the city commission.
Yeah, I know it did. It went all around town talking about it, because you had a young business, and this is one of the problems with very good intentioned people. I don't see a name on this group that owns any uptown property, has any skin in the game, but they want to tell. Now, they're not telling me. I sold all of my uptown property, probably the last building I sold probably 8-10 years ago. And the reason I did, partly because of this, the costs of uptown buildings, the cost of operating uptown buildings, the cost of taxes on uptown buildings have gone up tremendously. The rents have dropped. There's too much vacant property. There's no way to get a fair market rent, and yet you talk to the store owners and they're saying, we can't afford this rent, so it must be too high. Well, guess what else is too high? And at some point, I've got to ask the question, what is our goal with a historical district? If we're saving a particular building, and my family happened to own one of the prettiest buildings in uptown, and I say that with some prejudice, Tamara owns a very pretty historical building, I think, too. And there's 3 or 4 that are dotted around the community that I'd hate to see any real major change to those buildings. By the same token, I'm not seeing the historical group, and maybe it's got the wrong name, I'm not seeing much guidance out around the community or any help offered to any of the property owners. I am not one, so I'm not asking for help. I'm asking if there's a better way to address the uptown district than this historical group and some of the things they've done. Do you have that PowerPoint on the buildings? I went around town this weekend. I got handed this packet. My first day on the job, I got handed this 40-page packet. So I went around and looked at 2 or 3 things that kind of bothered me in the community, and I'm wondering why. With a group like the historical group, this building I happen to own, I sold this in about the 80s, and the stone down at the bottom is a fake stone. It used to cover the entire building, except there was also an aluminum awning. And I'm not going to name any of the owners of any of these buildings. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody or anything else, but this particular building started having trouble. That fake stone started pulling off of it. He decided to remove some of it, was going to put a siding up there, and he was told, no, you cannot use a siding on a building. This is in the historical district. And it happened to be 2 doors down. Well, the Traveler actually owns the building next door, but it's 2 doors down from the Traveler. And he decided he didn't want any stink over it, so he's left it that way. I think I sold that to him 20 years ago, and it's been that way probably 15, and I could be off again years-wise. This is what we're doing to our community. We're taking a building that could have, that's a solid concrete building. That building can live another 100 years, I'll bet you, with very little maintenance, but it looks terrible. I personally am the one that put the 3 fronts in it. It used to have the front over to the far right. That used to be a laundry building in Ark City. I remodeled it and made it 3 offices. It's now a warehouse. The front building is no use at all. Basically every wall, ceiling, I think everything's been pretty well removed, and it's strictly a warehouse now. It's a shame. It's a blight in that block. The Travelers building next door, the front looks better. Inside the building is no better, if not worse, than the building I'm showing you on the picture. If you zip to the next picture, I'll try to tell you. This building belonged to Tom Pingree, and I've got to thank the historical group for stopping his removal of the tile and putting this metal on, because he bought a building from me and moved out of it. He could not afford to tile, and I believe the next picture is it, the tile that's on there. And it's a beautiful tile roof, and I fully appreciate the fact somebody was trying to save that tile roof. Look, what Tom was doing with the metal was trying to save the awning and the look of the building without the expense of the tile. He told me when he bought my building, which is where A.C. Tire, I believe is what he's calling it now, isn't it? Down on Madison. He bought my building from me. He bought my building cheaper than he could fix this awning with the tile that was being required by the historical group. I do not know if it was just that level. I know he didn't ever go to the city commission, but this is the problem you run into with small business people when they're told by a city inspector or a city official, we can't allow you to do this under the historical group. You're gonna have to spend $80,000 and put a tile roof back on it. Don't touch it anymore. Tom quit. Now the building has 2 different roofs. When I looked at it, you can walk around it and see there's leaks everywhere. Obviously, he didn't get to fix the rest of the roof, so it's all leaking badly. All the facade's coming loose from the bottom. If you go to the next picture, please. This is the back of the Spent Jewelry building. Spent Jewelers are a jewel in Ark City, no pun intended. Little family business, 2 people run it, work it, bought the building. They've slowly over the years improved it, created a better building as far as I'm concerned, looks for the city. They have a small business in there. They appear to be doing pretty well. They're an asset to the community. In this same many minutes of your meeting, and I'm gonna read it if you'll forgive me a second and get to it. Let me get to it. Lorenzo brought up an issue with work that had been done on the Smith Jewelers. He felt the project didn't meet the standards and was inappropriate for the building. White acknowledged that he agreed and the project did indeed slip through the cracks. Slip through the cracks, hell. They made an improvement in Ark City. That back is what we call EFS, and there's 2 names for it, EFS or Drive It. Those are like Kleenex and Charmin, I'm sorry, but that's the 2 names I know. That is a styrofoam underneath to hold the texture, and it's like a stucco that they put on this building. They mention in this, and I'm not gonna read all of it to you, that, well, in a few years, it's probably gonna look like hell. That looks good. It may not last 20 years, it may not last 10, I don't know. I built 2 buildings using it, one of them in Newkirk and one of them in Dewey, Oklahoma. They both are 15 years old and look brand new. That protects the stone underneath. One of the problems we have with Ark City buildings is the stone is a soft limestone. Rain, snow, ice, everything deteriorates that building. They did exactly what I would have done if I owned that building and wanted to spend, I believe you're looking at $25,000, $30,000. I've never asked them, but I know enough about construction, no, they did not, that was not cheap to do to that building. While they were doing it, they did some point and tuck on the stone behind it to get everything smoothed up so they could enter there. And we've got people on a historical district board that think they know something about construction, that think they know this won't last very long, that are sending out the wrong message to our citizens that own properties in town. If you just flip one more picture here, I think I'll get to the ones I want. Yes, these next 2 or 3. This is in the next block south of Smith Jeweler. It's in the alley where it's not seen by a lot of people. This shows that same soft stone. If you walk up very close to it, you could take a rake and rake up a bucket full every foot of that stone that has shaled off. And if it doesn't get some sort of coverage on it quickly, and that picture's not a good one, flip another one for me, please. Okay, I'm gonna flip one more time. I hope we can get a little better picture. Well, this is the next, this is used to be Bonnie Niles' building, the old Harvey building. Harvey building was a radio. Anyway, this is one that'd been done back, I'm gonna tell you that was done in the 70s, and again, I could be off 5 years. That's a stucco finish, very similar to the EFS finish that they put on, except there's no styrofoam between it and the stone. Finally, 35, 40 years ago, it's starting to show some deterioration, but they've saved the back of that building for 35, 40 years. Now, none of these pictures I'm showing you is meant to embarrass anybody or point a finger at anybody, but the people that did the right thing, the Smiths, are being criticized in your report. The people that have done nothing, which is the buildings to the south of this one, nothing is happening to, nobody's going to them and offering, hey, could we make a suggestion? Can we help you improve the building? Can we save it? If one of those buildings goes down, they will domino. And I saw this happen in the 80s when the building behind the alley here, that whole park area was created by dominoing buildings. The first building started to collapse on the south, pulling the roof on the next one and the roof on. We lost 3 buildings right there overnight, basically. That's what happens with no maintenance. And I guess I'm prepared to make a motion that we do not enter into agreement with the state of Kansas, that the preservation group that we have in Ark City look at other alternatives and ways to improve our community. If you'd flip to the next one, please. Oh, I'm sorry, that's another one of the Smith building. That does show the Smith building, the side. Part of the Smith building, back when the window issue was the major issue, they used steel to cover the windows. My parents' building across the street was a major target of that attack because we had metal covering the windows. When my mother passed away, she never got to see the finished product. My brother took it on himself, and the 3 other siblings of the family sold him the building cheap enough he could afford to. He spent $42,000 across the street on the building, putting windows in it, that I swore I'd tear the building down before I did it. I was not going to allow the city to tell me that something my parents had done in the 60s was not good enough for this community. That's the way you start agitating property owners, and I'm one of those that gets agitated. Okay, if you go back to my bridge picture. This bridge was put up by the city, just finished 6 months ago in Crestwood. And I know there's a couple of Donnybrooks around the area, but I'm asking why that bridge looks like something Roger Rabbit would have put into one of his movies. In Crestwood, the most scenic, in my opinion, prejudiced as I am, Crestwood is the most scenic area of Ark City. Beautiful streets, winding roads, beautiful trees. We put a Roger Rabbit bridge in it. This is something I'd love to see your committee, your group, look into before it was built. The next picture is one of Skyline. This is out by Skyline on Skyline Road. Wouldn't it have been a lot better to have an iron railing on that bridge like that instead of a pure bridge like it looks in Crestwood?
Can I address that, Jim?
Yes, sir.
I was over that project, and the original design did include railing. In fact, Nick was able to get the railing off the West Madison Bridge for the city. We have it. We're going to use it. We're going to use solar lighting. We put it in the original design. And during the field check by K.S.A, Bureau of Local Projects, it was removed. And the reason it was removed, and this is from our design engineer who had it in there, it says K.S.A, and it's English, so isn't that great? Grammar. K.S.A was not allowing lighting, railing on the bridge, for it wasn't crash worthy, being on an RFB, which is a request for bid. I called K.S.A at the time and says, what does that mean? And they says that could cause more damage by using the railing and the lighting. Go back to that picture. I haven't talked to Nick or anybody about it, but the space, at least the space between the openings there, if we could take that railing and put it between there, and you can go to Lowe's and for $139 to get solar lighting. They're 15 inches tall, 8 inches in diameter, and we could put solar on there ourselves, solar lighting.
I guess, and I apologize, I'm not trying to make an example of anybody. I'm trying to show you in Ark City. That, to me, is one of the worst structures that has been built. And you're kind of answering my question. The state told you we're going to build it that way. And that's what's wrong with this revitalization thing that we're talking about, is the state's telling us what we're going to do in the community. And that's atrocious. We all agree that's atrocious for that to be in Crestwood for whatever reason. I agree with them. I don't want an unsafe bridge. I thought it might actually have some structural ability, but I don't think it does. It does hold a car up over the, so I understand that. There are some fixes maybe for it somewhere down the road, but that in Crestwood is terrible. And somebody.
K.S.A accepted it on May the 17th, so it's our bridge now.
Accepted.
The city's bridge. It was completed May 17th. In fact,
I understand that. No, I understand it's completed, but somebody knew it was going to look like that a year before.
no, we didn't know until February 5, 2018.
Then that's what I'm trying to point out. That's what's wrong. We've got a committee that could look into things like this and say, you know, we want something a little better than this. I can drive through Wichita and show you 100 bridges they've built that are architecturally pretty or nice or.
Jim, we actually had, like I said, we saved the railing off the old.
I understand, and I'd have loved that idea.
And we're gonna put, solar powered lights on there as well. And we had that in the plans all ready to go. We're prepared to do it. And then like you said, at the very last minute, they said, no, we can't do that.
It's because we got the funds from the federal highway.
And you guys are just doing nothing but making my point. Anytime you get the state involved, telling you what to do, we lose any control, so we get to live with this. I'm not blaming anybody, but that's exactly what happened to you on this bridge. It's exactly what's happening to our uptown. The smartest thing I did was sell out of Uptown, and I didn't do it for all the right reasons. I'm not that smart. The other reason that's killing Uptown is we're losing our small business people. It's no longer profitable to be in a lot of these small businesses. Retail is not what it used to be with all the internet and so on. So to salvage what is left of the Uptown, I'm not sure, I am sure in my own mind, putting up more rules and regulations to make people that are willing to spend money uptown is detrimental to what we're trying to get done, I believe. So at some point, I don't know if everybody's heard enough, I know they've heard enough of me. I'm gonna make a motion that we do not authorize the city to enter into an agreement with the Kansas State Historical Preservation Office, SHPO, until a further study of other methods of improving the city can be done.
Let me say one thing before you continue. On a side note, we came in under budget, so we should be getting roughly $14,000 or more back from the $80,000 we sent to the state, our 20% share. So we'll be getting money back to that. They're doing the final audit on the construction, engineering, and inspection now. Final cost of construction came in, so just want to let you know we'll be getting money back.
That's awesome.
Mike, how much did the bridge cost? Do you know? Remember?
Construction was roughly $288,551.55 construction.
Okay,
That's
that's
the
the actual cost, totally.
And then,
And we asked for funds from the state.
right, it was through the off-road bridge project, 50
Mhm.
vehicles or less a day, and it's 80-20.
Okay,
Our
and
share was 20%. We paid for the survey, right-of-way, temporary and permanent right-of-way easements, and then the design,
okay.
engineering for it.
And was that bridge? The reason we did that bridge was because it was
Structurally
deteriorating.
efficient.
If we hadn't gotten the funds, we'd have had to pay the full 288,000.
Oh, we had to pay almost 300,000.
300,000?
Probably 350,000 out of pocket.
We don't have
On top
money.
of- Top of what?
If that's part of a road project, or a bridge would be a road project, part of the city's,
Right, it's, yeah.
we'd have to have $300,000.
Well, overall, we'd have to have about 380-some thousand. I don't know what the
Okay.
final cost will be.
So we
We would have had to pay the full amount.
What we did
afterwards.
was get a bridge fixed, the
Replace-
cheapest money we could, and use state funds. That's why we went that route.
Right.
It's not because
It's
it
a
looked,
pass-through. It's federal funds that's passed through the state, through KDOT.
right, okay. And bridge didn't have anything to do with SHPO at all.
No,
So I'm not sure why you brought it
That
up.
wasn't my point, I'm sorry.
Well, you brought it up at the same time, that's why.
Okay.
I was wanting to know what it cost. And that, I brought out the cost, and we went to the state for the money, because we don't have that kind of money to fix bridges, do we?
no.
So, that's what I wanted to bring out. So, and the SHPO is historic preservation. And Josh, and the people that we have appointed to that are the ones that have volunteered. They may not know, but they get the best information they can from Josh or Mr. Ferrer, who, for our, far.
Fair.
We had Gene Snell on the board too.
Yeah,
Several years, and he certainly was a business owner.
Yeah.
Worked on the road.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with the people we have now, so.
Can I just clarify something too? Sure. By entering into this agreement, it doesn't change the fact that we are in a historic district and the state has to do the reviews. So if we were to decide not, if you were to decide not to enter into the agreement, basically what that means is that the reviews would still happen. They would just happen up in Topeka at the SHPO. And there wouldn't be any kind of local thing. Now, you could still appeal here. But by entering this agreement, you're actually bringing the control back to the local level so that the local board has the opportunity to discuss it and have a little bit of discretion on these items.
So are you in essence saying there's no way we can get out of an agreement that we made in 1983?
Basically,
on-
when it comes down to it, I asked that this morning to the National Register coordinator of the state. Just said the only way to remove something from the National Register is to demonstrate that the character, the historic character of the building, the district in our case, is gone. That's really the only way that.
That's a building by building method?
Well,
District.
in our case, it would be the district, so it
The
would have
whole
to be the
district
district as
would
a
have to
whole,
be.
lost its historical integrity. Probably the only way that would happen is if there was a bad fire.
Tornado or something goes through, yeah.
So you're saying, you're not adding anything, you're asking to maintain the local control. And I appreciate what you're saying, Jim, I do. Because I've been against putting any pressure on business people trying to be downtown and have their businesses, and Josh and I have talked about that. You've got a couple of people in the audience that want to speak. I know Jim has a motion on the floor, but
Well, it hadn't been seconded, so I threw it out there so we could discuss it.
Jim, can I ask you, was your mother involved with this, group that put us on the register?
By involved, are you asking if she
Was
supported
in
it?
favor of us becoming a historic
district.
I believe my parents were interested in several of the historical buildings. Naming the high school building was one of them. They looked into their building because it is one of the most historically significant buildings in Ark City, and decided that it was probably going to be detrimental to them to being part of it. So no, they did not opt into the program. They were put in.
Certain about that?
Yes, I am. We've discussed it quite a few times. They were put into the program by a vote of the people in that particular block. They decided to put the block into the district, and they had no extra choice.
I'm just saying that the preservation, it's not just that we're preserving a bunch of old buildings, but we're trying to preserve our heritage. I mean, this is, you know, people in Ark City were on board with this. Maybe
Yes.
their parents weren't, I don't know, but
No,
I
they weren't.
know that.
But that's
I
immaterial to me at this
watched-
time, but
I bought an old map that was in the estate of your mother, so I know she liked historical things.
I'm going to tell you, my mother probably was the most historical person in Ark City. Mrs. Eaton being right up there close to her. The two of them loved history of Ark City, and I sat at a kitchen table many an evening having to listen to that.
Well, that's what we're trying to preserve, is the
That,
history.
if you understood what you're trying to preserve these properties has to be financially viable. Foss, they're not something, the old Farrah Buick building is no longer here. It wasn't financially viable. I'm sorry, that's what will finally
Are you
dictate.
saying then, because right now, we're one of just 16 CLGs, so, you know, this
I'm sorry, I'm missing what you're,
certified local governments.
there are 16 in the state of Kansas.
16 in the state,
Okay.
we're one of 16.
Okay.
We're in there with some pretty elite towns. Do you want to degrade the town and say we no longer want to, because Brenda
No,
Spencer,
no,
who just
Foss.
2 years ago, Brenda Spencer was here, and your brother talked to her a lot, and she resurveyed the downtown and said that we had one of the best group of buildings altogether, for our size of a town in the state, and that we should be proud of the district, and not only that, but we should expand it. Now, we haven't gotten the majority of owners in the proposed expanded district to accept that, or, you know, I know that we're financially hurting in this town, but, I also know that, are we just gonna give up and just say, okay?
Well, Foss, you've hit on 2 or 3 good points, but I'm going to throw them right back against you. We're one of 16 towns.
This isn't a debate.
No, it isn't,
I'm
but
talking about
but
the
I'm-
community pride.
Okay, I'm asking
I
you-
think we're losing our community pride by doing something like what you propose.
No, I'm not proposing losing the pride. That's
You're
why I threw up the
proposing
bridge that
doing away with the CLG, which is local people.
I want to change it,
working-
Foss. I want to change it for the better. It's detrimental to some of our property owners. You're not hearing me. I'm trying to make the uptown better by making it easier for the uptown business owners to improve their own building and not be burdened with unfair costs or unfair improvement practices that do not make sense to them. Does that sound better, maybe?
It
I-
does,
Boss, I'm as proud of
except
this
the
community as
state-
anybody here.
The state basically cannot tell a building owner what to do with their building. Did you know that? If a building owner wants to tear their building down, they can do that.
You believe that?
But they're no longer part of the district.
Okay.
They're no longer a, they can't get the tax credits that you can get if you, renovate in the way that makes it look attractive.
That's all they lose, is the tax credits?
We don't get any tax credits. To get the tax credits, you have to do a major, Nick and I talked about this morning.
Well, that's the reason why Burford went through their project,
Yeah.
because they got the tax
Yeah.
credits, that's what
They,
wanted.
they got the tax credits by spending $6.5 million, and they actually received about 75,000. Foss, you were on that, weren't you, on the Burford? Was it 75, 80,000?
I wasn't on
On
Okay.
tax credits?
The Burford got
No,
$1
in-
million in tax
Yeah.
credits.
In tax credits, but cash money, the Burford got about 75, 80,000, I
Well,
believe.
actually, they were able to monetize the tax credits
Yeah.
and pay off all of the loans, so the Burford is debt-free, paid in full.
And so the audience understands the tax credits. What they got was credits they could sell to people that needed tax write-offs. So you sell $1 million worth of tax credits for 300,000 cash, you got $300,000 cash for the
No,
Burford
They got
project.
about $1 million cash when they sold them.
In cash, out of $1 million
Yeah.
tax credits?
Yeah.
That's way better than
That's how they
normal.
paid off the loan and
Okay,
kept it
so
stable.
we got
That's
$1
all
million,
they
so we
need.
got $1 million out of a $6 million expenditure.
Yes.
Not even a, well, and again, my point is, the major projects like the Burford, major projects like the high school renovation, I'm for both of them, by the way, before anybody paints me in a corner like I'm against improving uptown. I'm not. I'm against the idea that the Smiths did something wrong. Deathly against that.
Nobody said they did, wrong. I was gonna read that again, okay.
You're in that meeting. You're on it.
I was not in that.
What this
You're-
all comes
you're
down
there.
to, Jim, is really, what I support this because I wanna maintain local control. I don't want Topeka telling us what to do.
And I agree with
If we
that.
don't approve this
I wholeheartedly
resolution,
agree with that.
That's exactly what's gonna happen.
Okay.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, it was done in 1983.
And we
I
can't
wish
get out of it.
wouldn't have been done, I wish it would have been a Main Street, Kansas program, but, unfortunately, we're stuck with what we have, and I think we should, by approving this, we can at least have the individuals that you appoint to that board make the decisions. So you can remove those individuals on the preservation board.
I don't want to remove anybody.
I'm just saying, but at least it's the commission's board making the decisions rather than being Topeka's board making the decisions.
And apparently Topeka's, right, satisfied with what we're doing. I mean, it just makes it easier. We're kind of the go-between, We can do we have more power now to, do the little things that need to be done with these buildings. I mean, help the building owners do those things.
And what power do you have to help a
Well, it
business
says
owner?
here.
What can you help?
Says, I'll give you this one too.
Yeah, help me a little bit, get along with you.
Okay. We became a CLG in 1912, okay?
2012.
1912, yeah, 20.
2012, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I do the.
You're fine.
Here's the column. You're fine. Sometimes I get stuck there, but, okay, so we're one of 16 CLGs in the state. It expands the powers and responsibilities of the local board is what the ordinance does. It gives us an additional voice. Isn't that what you're trying to say, Nick? In the design review process on requests by property owners. And it bypasses Topeka on many of the things that people do. I mean, improvements to the building. Union State Bank is another example that's taking advantage of some of the tax credits and the grants. Is that correct? So,
So there's 4 buildings in town that's taking advantage of it.
Well, there's a motion on the floor.
Osage Apartments also have.
Well, Mel's been standing for a half
no,
hour.
we're not talking right now. I'm talking. I'm just saying it saves a legacy if we keep our downtown. If you wanna see little potholes between the buildings like some towns. I just think it degrades us. And what we're saying is we give up on the town, we don't have any community pride. So I think we need to do what we can to keep it. Here's another quote, I read a book a little bit about preservation, and the guy that gave the talk in Lawrence said he could argue either side, just like you're doing. But he said he came in favor of the preservation. He's from Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, it puts, if we continue the CLG, it just, I don't know, puts smiles on people's faces and money in their pocket. If homes aren't enjoyable or neighborhoods viable, businesses profitable, then people aren't going to invest in preservation. So is that the group you're in? I don't know. I've talked too long, perhaps.
Thank you, boss.
Yeah.
Thank you, Foss.
Dale, go ahead.
I'll be brief. 1 hour.
3 minutes.
The historic preservation started with the urban renewal projects of the 60s and 70s, and they tore down big parts of inner city, and it was decided it was a bad idea, so they started historic preservation, which the idea was to pump money back and make these buildings viable, and it didn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. Plus, the energy codes have way exceeded what you're allowed to do according to the preservation. Now, the problem with preservation is you can't preserve it to look at. You have to preserve it, you have to be able to use it, otherwise it just becomes a shell. And so the problem is, we're not within the confines of preservation, just like the Taylor windows. Within their confines, we're not allowed to do things we need to do. And it can go far into windows, doors, facade, roofing, and it's just too burdensome on these. So we're actually losing ground by adhering to this rule, because nobody can maintain the building because of the stringent rules and the layers of bureaucracy piled on top of these guys trying to fix stuff. So to me, if you want to maintain or save these buildings, let people work on them. If they make some minor change on them, especially, nobody's going to go in and change the facade in great amount because there'll be no point. Might as well tear the building down and start over again. But let them save what they can. But if they've got to replace windows, they shouldn't have to ask everybody's permission to do so. How many months did it take for Taylor to get his windows in? It was just a bureaucracy delay on delay after day. When Roger Sparks was trying to do the fronts of his building, he was 90 days delayed by the state. When WB Meeks were trying to build their building, it took them a year. And this is unnecessary. We're not saving our town by preserving things that are bad. You know, the draft stops that don't work, the rear of the buildings that are all falling down. If you want anybody to use these buildings, you got to make them more workable and really good. So you have to allow people to do what they think is best for them at that time.
Okay, but I'm sorry, what?
I was gonna ask Josh a question, Mel. Like WB Meeks, Josh, I mean, that was before we got control of our destination, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, we have better control. I mean, the waiting period won't be as long as, what it was.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
So, okay.
That's an unusually long waiting for people, to be honest.
Yeah. So we're in this district, even though nobody up here put us in it. We're in this district, and there's virtually no way out.
That's not true. You can get out. You can absolutely get out.
You can get out, but like I said before, you have
It's
to.
a 90-day period to get out. So this is no big hurdle.
That's not.
It's not right?
The state says.
And that's a little problem, and I've maybe created part of it, and I apologize, but the misinformation doesn't help us make a decision. I want true and accurate information. My motion, I believe, was to address the fact that we not join this until the city, in whichever group they want to throw it to, looks at other alternatives to this method. And that includes getting out of it. If I don't make all my points clear, the point I'm trying to make is the expense, the problem to property owners uptown is proving that we're not fix-up buildings. I gave you a couple examples for good reasons. of people that left uptown for financial reasons, could not afford to fix up the buildings to the standards that were put in front of them. Whether they could have appealed that, whether they could have done other things is immaterial at this point. They're gone from the city of Arc City, or from the uptown part of the city. And Tom Pingree place, he stayed in Arc City and is doing very well in his new location, I can tell, but we're losing something, and we're gonna lose. Foss and I are on the same side. Foss, you know that. I wanna maintain the beautiful buildings. I wanna maintain the integrity of our town. But we're trying to legalize throwing it out without even realizing it. None of your preservation will work if it's not financially viable. The examples that we've all given have been that the college had money coming in from taxpayers to spend that money. That Burford had had donations from all over the world, basically. $6 million spent on that building. That's not financially viable. It's the goodness of the people around town that wanted to maintain that, and I happen to be one of them. So I'm not knocking those projects or anything else. They're great projects, and they're anchor projects. But if we don't loosen the grip, you're gonna choke small business to death uptown, and you'll find them north of town, south of town, Parker Field, wherever they wanna open up. If we can get the bigger issue is getting small business to create a business in Arc City. I'd love to create more business.
Josh, when do you have to know? Are you up against a deadline?
Technically, it expires in September, because it was from the date that we signed the agreement. So it was I think it was September 3rd was when it was actually executed at Hillside. So arguably, it's expired as of today.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, we don't have anything on there.
Josh just asking, if we had 60 days, 90 days to study this a little bit, I know I've hit some raw nerves. I brought it up first day on the commission. I'm gonna bring up 2 or 3 things that might be offensive to people that don't mean them to be. I mean to throw them out there for discussion. I think discussion will help this city grow and prosper as long as we're all together in open minds and not at each other's throats. I'm not after you, I'm not after Foss or anybody or the people with the buildings uptown. I'm telling you from my perspective, we're killing the uptown businessman trying to improve it. We need to loosen the grip. Maybe the city can check out what we can do instead of. Maybe we need a meeting with some of the uptown business meetings. I don't own any property
I would
uptown.
just fine with that.
I should not have a say of what happens uptown. I don't own a building up there. We ought to be getting some of the uptown business owners. You own your building, don't you?
No, the
Okay.
family does.
Anyway,
Josh, this comes up every year, doesn't it?
This is
No, it's
this is
5
5
years.
years.
5 years.
that's what I'm asking for, a 90-day reprieve to look into alternatives. And that's not gonna offend the state too badly, is it? And might even give the state, you might have the
Well-
chance.
I have the answer from the state already, from the Kansas, or National Register Coordinator for Kansas Historical Society, in regards to what properties, get a property delisted off of there. So I have that already in here. Says once property is listed in National Register of Historic Places, it can only be removed based on either an error in evaluation / procedure, or if the property is found to no longer retain its historic integrity. Loss of historic integrity might mean that those qualities have been destroyed, i.e. demolished, or have been so altered that they no longer convey their historic character. After reviewing our records, which is the state records, there does not appear to be any error in the evaluation or procedure that led to listing the district in 1983. The only option for this particular property, historic district, would be if the district no longer retains integrity and that those qualities have been destroyed. A resurvey of the Arc City Commercial Center Historic District and surrounding areas was just completed within the past year, and the findings of that survey confirmed that the district still retains integrity. A person may request that the HPO remove the property or district from the NRHP if the petitioner are able to demonstrate and document how the property no longer retains its historic integrity and that those elements have been destroyed. While it isn't a requirement, when someone did submit a request, I think our office would be curious to know if there were property owners within the district who supported the request as well as any other local organizations, such as Downtown Development, Neighborhood Association, elected officials, or city staff.
So Jim, are you now asking that it be tabled?
Well, I'm asking that we not approve or not, as I read this, consider a resolution authorizing the city of York City to enter into an agreement with Kansas State. Yes, I guess I'm asking for a 90-day reprieve to do exactly that. I'm not saying what Nick brought up I hadn't seen before, and I talked to Nick about it this morning, so I don't think he had either. I think a little time and cooler heads might bring an alternative to both. I'm not just nailed down to what I'm saying tonight. I'm telling you what I'm seeing, and I think all of you will agree that our uptown is starting to suffer. And I blame the revitalization as a portion of it. I blame the fact that small businesses are dying a horrible death, and we have no control over that. I blame the taxation on the commercial property. It's 3 times what it is on a house in town for the same value property. We can't change all those factors. The only one I see we could change very immediately is the historical district, or at least the local interpretation of what's historically correct. There was no reason for windows to come up to any of this district. There's no reason to chastise the Smiths for doing an improvement that certainly isn't historically correct, but it's the right thing to do for the building. There's no reason to point out the Burfords working on a small interior project involving commercial kitchen, but we're not sure if that project's moving forward or not. Why aren't we sure? Did they apply for a permit? Are they doing something?
Well, we're still
group-
raising the money for that kitchen.
Okay,
So-
so it's not happening.
Well, it's going to happen, but it's not happening.
So is the
right now.
historical group involved in it happening, or know what's going on? Are they approving it?
I'm not sure on that, Jim.
See, that's what I'm not. Reading their minutes, it leaves it open. So
Because at
I,
that time, we didn't know what the project.
no, I'm sure. I'm not,
That's what that comes down to.
I'm not trying to be critical of you, Foss, or anybody else on this group. I'm trying to say that, take a step back a minute. Let's take 90, if it's not gonna drop an axe on our head, let's take 90 days.
But that's what I'm saying, it will, because that
You
agreement
could,
expires.
you could not call the state tomorrow and say, we've got a little problem in our
Well,
city.
I can't say that's not true.
Well, I'm trying to throw out an example to you. What I'm looking for is some feedback. If you could go to the state and say, look, we're having a problem. Some of these buildings, they've got a couple of buildings uptown advertised for less than $10,000. That should be the lot price uptown, but it's not.
We're gonna advertise ourselves as going downhill, is that what you want?
No.
We had an expert.
What I wanted,
We had an expert resurvey the town, and she says it's intact.
and Foss, I won't put myself up against any expert you're talking about. I'm saying,
You make it sound like we're about to have Armageddon, so.
no. We're having a deterioration of uptown that everybody in this building can see. I'm saying the state has run into this issue in other cities. There's a reason there's only 16 cities in this group out of some 100 and some counties with probably 1,000 cities. We're not that elitist. We jumped into something that may or may not be causing a problem. I think if we didn't yes-man this resolution, the state might have some alternatives. Well, we could let up on these buildings that really aren't historically correct. I don't know that, because I've never been there.
But Tim, I don't think that's going to
They're
happen.
not gonna happen. Okay.
There's a motion on the floor, Mayor.
Yeah.
Is
and
there a
once you-
second to that motion?
No, there was not, so.
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, call for a vote.
Well, is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous what you've brought up. We're not trying to change anything, we're just trying to preserve what we have already gotten as a certified local government. We're not going in there to change anything on the buildings at all. It's for them to come to the city commission after the Historic Preservation Board. I don't think that if we go back and abolish this, we're going back 20 years, I'd say, on what we're doing. We've progressed, and through the years, what I've understood and heard about the State Historic Preservation Board and what they've come up with, I think they've relaxed a lot of the provisions that they've had in that, because they've found businesses in the state and small businesses that couldn't afford what they wanted. So I can't see going back by abolishing this program. It's just an agreement that conduct historic reviews. It's not changing anything other than that. That we're,
One quick thing. We are adherent to the 2015 International Code. The 2015 Energy Code far exceeds anything that the State Historical Review would make you do. So complying with standard current energy codes exceeds what they want you to do. So they make you put windows back are actually going against the code recommendation of which we're signatory of.
well, with this resolution, we have the option to say no.
Yeah.
Why bother having it at all? Why be handed, why we hand it ourselves?
Because it takes us off the historic preservation thing.
Well,
There's only 16 cities left, and they're all up for.
That may be all that has taken it.
No,
It's the 16.
Everybody was doing it.
Just 16 is the CLGs, which allow them to do it locally, is what it is, the CLGs.
Well, the amount.
There's other historic
That's
districts
true.
besides
That's true.
16.
That's true. And
I'm
every
sorry, I
town
didn't
has
hear you.
Historical society, which I agree with.
He said there's
However,
others.
I can't hear two people
There's
talking
other
at once.
historic districts besides those 16. They just don't have any kind of agreement like that, but they're still under that authority.
So the main difference in our agreement and the other communities is we could control our own destiny in Arc City.
I think that's what we have.
In
Yeah.
practice, if we don't approve this, let's say tomorrow someone requests an exception to put up a sign that's not technically falls within the guidelines. So if we don't approve this, let's say someone wants to put up a non-conforming sign tomorrow, they're going to have to work with Topeka to get it done. Whereas if you do approve this, they can work with our local board, and if they don't like what the board has to say, they can work with the city commission. So that's what this agreement does.
Well, can Topeka stop a business owner? I own this business, I am putting this sign up. Can they stop that?
They could probably try. They could probably go to court and get a cease and desist order and argue that it violates the historic integrity of the district. I don't know if they've ever done that.
I don't think that they have actually.
So the tax credits go to larger projects. They're not gonna go to a small business owner who's putting in.
No, that's actually not true.
Yeah.
I believe, I wanna say $5,000 is the minimum for it though. Now, the grants, the actual cash grants,
Right.
yes, those are much larger projects.
Right.
The
And that
tax
was-
credits are.
That was one of the problems my brother had with the building that Foss was talking about. The gal that was trying to help my brother get some grants to help do that, was unable to because it was only a $41,000 project. We sold the building to him cheaper than he spent on the windows, I can tell you that figure right now. So it's probably a moot point. Anybody that hasn't been an uptown property owner and know the conflict between the rents and the taxes and the expenses doesn't realize that the line is so fine that anybody stepping in demanding things that are unrealistic to them puts them out of business or puts them out of the notion. And I'm out, so my hands are clean, I don't care. I simply brought it up tonight to discuss it. I think it is a problem of Arc Cities. I think if we don't address it now, we'll be addressing it again in 5 years. And there may be more vacant buildings, there may be more demolished buildings, there may be some more. If we don't do something uptown on.
Call the
backs
question,
of some of these
please.
buildings. Okay.
We got a motion to not consider a resolution.
Postpone 90 days is what I asked for, finally, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, postpone for 90 days. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion did not carry.
Okay, I'll move that we adopt the resolution to consider a resolution authorizing the city of Arc City to enter into an agreement with the Kansas State Historic Preservation Officer to conduct historic reviews under K.S.A. 75-2724E as amended.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved second. Any other discussion? If not, it's voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So, all right, number 3.
Select voting delegates to the League of Kansas Municipalities Annual Business Meeting.
Okay, we've talked about this a few times. The meeting's October 12th through the 14th. Are there any commissioners that would like to go to Overland Park just for the final time? I'm not gonna ask again. So if you'd like to go on those dates, let me know, and get hotel rooms and get you set up. Partial agenda is already in your packet, so you can kind of see what the breakout is. The plan is actually to leave the evening of the 12th to be there for their opening, little kickoff, and then be there all day 13th, and then come home on the 14th. So it'll be 2 nights at Overland Park,
That's with October what now?
12th through the 14th.
Okay.
Okay.
And their opening is on the 11th.
No, it starts on the 12th.
We wouldn't leave till the 12th, right?
Yeah, we'd leave
Leave
the
the
12th. Probably early afternoon on the 12th to be there, the evening of the 12th. And then we'll be there all day the 13th. And then we'll come home on the 14th, later in the afternoon.
Nick, being the newest commissioner, I don't know what goes on at these meetings, so, and I don't think with a 4-month term, I should probably put the city to the expense, put me up or do anything else, but I would be curious what all goes on at these meetings. What would I be missing not to go?
What they talk about is all topics that are relevant to the city, to the different cities. And they talk about CLGs, they talk about, social media, issues. They talk about, open meetings acts. They talk about all the different hot topics that are going around the state, because just because we're talking about it, I can guarantee you there's 20 or 30 other cities that are dealing with the exact same issue or have the exact same questions. And so what the League of Kansas Municipalities during this conference, it brings elected officials together with appointed officials like city clerks, city managers, and brings them all together so they can have discussion on these issues and learn from different people and different experiences throughout the state of how to probably do it or how not to do it. And it's actually a great conference for
I
those
guess.
individuals that have never attended. And it's a good way to network too, and get those connections with those other communities that are of like size. Because you learn really quickly, you know, do you got a good city? Do you got a good program? Do you got good staff? Do you got, you know, you find out a lot about your own town and what other people think of your town by going to these things too, which is really neat. And it's very eye-opening. And I think Jay, Karen, and Dwayne, I think you've all attended. I know Jay for a fact can tell you, he goes to those meetings, and every time he goes, he's like, Arksy, that's a great town. You guys got a lot of good things going on. You know, and people mention the downtown, sorry to bring that, they'll mention how nice the downtown is, how they love our brick streets, and, you know, people hate brick streets, you know, some people do. But, I mean, you hear those things, and it kind of gets you thinking from an outside perspective about your own community, and it's really a good opportunity if you get the chance to go, it really is.
It's great. I'd like
Yep.
to go.
Can we
Learn
let
a
you
lot.
know by Friday at the work session, or is that too late?
Please, by Friday,
Okay.
no later than Friday,
Okay,
somebody get us signed up.
all right.
In the hotel.
All right, number 4, we have,
Select the voting delegates for the business
Yeah,
meeting.
we need to
Oh.
do that
And
anyway.
then
okay,
If you even remotely think you're gonna go, just, we can put the names in. If it changes, we have alternates. So what I'd suggest is probably pick 3 of you as delegates and then 3 more as alternates. And it could be myself an alternate or whoever else is gonna be attending.
Try. I'll try.
I'll go.
yeah, just put us 3 down, and then
Will you just, Mayor, you wanna make?
I'll make a motion that, that myself and Karen and Dwayne be the alternates for the
The voting
primary?
members.
The primaries.
voting member.
You're the primary.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would second Jay's motion. I am gonna ask that I be included as an alternate. I would pay my own way because I don't believe I'd be benefited enough to justify the city's expense. And I'm not sure I wanna go anyway, so I wanna be an alternate. But with that caveat, I'd like to be an alternate.
And I'd like to be an alternate, and King would like to be an alternate as well.
I don't know, nobody mentioned me, so don't worry about it.
I'd
You
like
gotta
King
speak
to
up
be an
just like I
alternate.
did.
okay, all right, Ken will be an alternate.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, number 4,
an ordinance accepting the application of K.S.A. 41-719D to allow the consumption of alcoholic liquor as a designated area for South Central Kansas Medical Center during the South Central Kansas Medical Center Lane Rush from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday, September 21st, 2019.
What this will allow us for that time period for their event, because we have to pass an ordinance for every time since it is leased to the hospital, we do have to approve it by the city commission. Our long-term goal, and I know that, Tamara and, Andrew have been working on this, is to get certain properties exempt so they don't have to come through this process again. But we're not there yet, so we need to pass this ordinance to allow them, to have that consumption on their property.
Okay. Jeff, is the time right, 9 AM to 2 PM?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
So moved.
Well, I make a motion that an ordinance accepting the application of K.S.A. 41-719D to allow the consumption of alcohol liquor at the designated area of South Central Kansas Medical Center during the SCKMC Land Rush from 9 AM to 2 PM Saturday, September the 21st. Is there a second?
Second, yes.
Okay, been second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Roll call vote, Mayor? Commissioner Eastman,
Do what?
roll call vote.
Oh,
Roll
I'm
call.
sorry. Okay.
Commissioner Eastman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gager,
Yes.
Commissioner Sybrant,
Yes.
Commissioner Welch,
Yes.
Mayor Warren,
Yes. Motion carries.
Get a little excitement.
I didn't see that on there, a roll call vote. It wasn't on here. Okay. All right, do you want to go under city man updates first, or we go to executive session, or? Okay.
We do have a study session this Friday. We're gonna talk about UPOC and STO. Chief Ward will not be here on Friday, but Tanner will be giving the presentation. The Rise County Health Coalition meeting is coming up. Let's see, Tuesday, September 10th. Also, County Legislative Committee will be noon, Tuesday, September 10th, at the Winfield Area Chamber of Commerce. City Commission, County Commission, we have our joint meeting next Tuesday at 6 PM in the Brown Center. One of the questions that was presented to me late this afternoon was, in regards to public comment, during what period, how much, how do you want to handle public comments, during the study session? So that's something that I'd like to get input from the commissioners, so I can relate that to the county commissioner and the county manager in regards to that.
Well, I think what my personal feeling, I've been thinking about it since you brought it up, for a meeting, would be to have discussion with both groups, first, and then maybe open it up to the public there at the end if anybody wants to ask questions or whatever. I don't want to get in that situation where we're asking questions and all of a sudden somebody stands up and raises his hand and kind of wants to get into the conversation. I think we ought to wait till the end of that thing, because maybe a lot of those questions may be answered as we go through this process, Does
I agree
anybody
with you,
have a
Mayor.
problem with that?
No, I think that's exactly the way I'd like to see it happen, is let all the commissioners talk.
Yeah.
Let us re-talk. I mean, just like the discussion tonight that kept talking, re-talk. You get more information by communicating, not by hiding your feelings. So, yes, I prefer to do exactly what Jay's saying. At the end of the conversation, or between the commissioners, I'd love to have some input if it's different input. I don't want anybody to make a second to something that Jay said or I said or something else. If it's been said, it's enough.
I'll relay that to the county manager.
Okay.
7th annual Battle of Badges fundraiser will be Saturday, September 14th at 9 AM. At our City High School South Sports Complex. And I think the benefit this year's, for Melissa Patton, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, for Melissa Patton, so proceeds go to Melissa Patton and her fight against cancer. Also received a thank you letter in your packet from Keely and Randy Frank in support of the Sergeant Kevin Gilbertson Memorial Bridge dedication, which occurred on August 3rd. Also in your packet, and we can review this and talk about this later on, we did attend the local consult meeting. And so what you have in your packet is basically where they're at today and what they see as being the process moving forward. So please review that, and if you have any questions, just let myself or even Mike Crandall know, and we can get you more information.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, we need to go into executive session for new business for 20 minutes, for executive session to discuss non-elected personnel for 20 minutes, and put us back in here at 7:35.
Who's it includes?
Second.
Includes Nick and the city commission.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, no.
Make a motion to extend for 10 minutes in executive session with the
Second.
same people.
Well, okay, it's been,
45.
okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Do you guys?
Need a motion for a meeting to be adjourned?
Second.